So the channels where eliminate our waste, are they blocked or are they free? So there might be a normal amount of toxins accumulated, but without a way of being eliminated. Maybe there's a blockage. Do you think about this, or do you think, okay, I ate this, I don't feel it in my stomach, it's done, it's over? No problem. A normal amount of toxins accumulated, but without a way of being... No, ma sto parlando, devi dire alla... Mi senti? Ok. So the process starts with the ojas, the life vitality, when the food is assimilated and arrives to our cells, and then the waste is eliminated. So it's a little bit more complex than the digestion as we normally perceive it. Agni, the fire of digestion, we can compare this to when we take a raw food, let's say rice, whatever, or something that should be cooked. It can be cooked well or badly. It can be cooked in a way that it's digestible or not well enough transformed to render it digestible. The choice of the food which is good for us and the cooking method is absolutely crucial to our digestive process. The same food in one state or another can be determinant as to its being digested or not. Think about, apart from the choice, so the choice also when we eat certain foods. Or something when we have some kind of burning sensation in our stomach, or something that's too hot, or something associated with another food which is not well combined. That can have a negative effect. So let me give you some examples. So for example, ham and melon, which is very popular in Italy, these associations, which actually are no good for us, the mozzarella, but usually the problem is when you make it combine it with other things. It's not the food in itself, but also how it's combined. And also, of course, as I said, how it's cooked. Then there's digestive system, which will reduce to the gastric phase. So the gastric part, if this is done correctly, there could be a good absorption and therefore and also assimilation and also transportation, and the waste is eliminated easily. What do we mean by bad digestion? So slow digestion, acidità or burning, stomach pain, nausea, or some kind of acid reflux or a bitter taste in our mouth. I think we've all recognized these symptoms. Okay, I hope you haven't suffered from all of these, but you probably know about them at least. There are other signs which are, but which are not seen. So they're talking, the audience is talking now, I can't hear. Okay, so I've just been told there's something not working with the images. Special message to the translator, so we have a little bit of silence, a technical hitch, which should be sorted out soon. So we talk about Agni, digestive fire, Ojas, and Ama. And we're talking about eliminating waste. Okay, so our technician is arriving. So this can cause other unseen symptoms, sleepiness, low energy after meals. It's not normal that you should have a big drop in energy after you eat. That all the blood that goes to the stomach, that means there's not enough for the rest of the body. It's true that, for example, it's true that immediately after you shouldn't engage in very energetic physical activity, but that doesn't mean to say that I have a huge drop in energy. So that means the digestion is using up more energy than it should do. And the other thing is, immediately afterwards, when you have a bloated stomach, in the intestine or in the stomach, that also indicates that the digestion is not working. Headache after meals, that's a sign. That indicates a problematic digestion. You can have itching, dermatitis. That also may be a symptom of poor digestion. Which can provoke the production of histamines, for example. So those who eat badly can suffer from diarrhea or constipation. That's the stomach. It seems that it's another thing. It doesn't seem to be a symptom of indigestion. Those who... So people say, well, my stomach is my vulnerable part. So if you have gastroenteritis, all these things, bad stomach, they're all signs. There's something that's not right with your digestion. Who are the protagonists of a good digestion? Let's see who they are. The secretion of gastric juices of good quality, which means a lot of enzymes and not too much acidity. The enzymes, those transform the food easily. So it's the smallest part. The acidic part should be a minimum part to to disinfect the food before it's absorbed, before it gets into the gut, but just a small amount. So gastric juices and acidity for so how do they? So the two valves need to be coordinated. So these two valves need to be coordinated. The digestion is completed. The lower valve, when digestion is complete, which is opened, so when you have a very low pH, a high acidity, that goes into the secondary valve, and that goes immediately into, this mixed immediately with the bile and with pancreatic secretion juice. So, so the enzymes can correct this high acidity, but we shouldn't have too much acidity in our food. So this acidity can be countered by with alkaline from. Okay, so if it were finished there, the intestine wouldn't be so long. We'd say that's okay, that's finished. The intestine is really long because the digestive process has to kind of be refined itself. The molecules which are divided, they have to be transformed into essential foods which are absorbed, so first they're sent to the liver to be cleaned and filtered, and then it's used by the cells of all our organs. The intestine, the microbiotic has an essential role. It refers to the bacteria, fungi, parasites, other smaller forms, also viruses, and even smaller, which if they weren't there, we would not be able to complete our digestion. The microbiota, which is called all these microorganisms, which is not a support, it's fundamental, it's not optional. For example, sterilized rats did not survive after 4 or 5 days because they didn't digest properly, because they didn't have the necessary microorganisms. The important concept, so digestion microbiota, so a well-digested food has a healthy microbiota. Let's say an unhealthy one, which includes elements which are not yet ready or have been too long in the intestine or combined badly, surely can nourish the negative microbiota, which can cause stomachache, etc. Therefore, a good digestion And efficient means a microbiota which is balanced, complemented by a good digestive phase, an absorption of very nutritional substances, and that leads to good health and fewer problems. So it's a quite it's a complicated process, which happens without our being aware of it. And a lot happens while we sleep because it's a slow, long process. For example, have you ever asked yourself how long does, so from the time we eat and from the time we eliminate the waste, how long is that? How long is it? 12 hours a day? How long do you think it is? No more. A good process would be from 24 to 35 hours or to 2 days, because the path is long, and the further down the process we go, the slower it is. And it should be so. So people who have diarrhea, is that good digestion? No. So the same. But those who have a digestion that's too slow means that the nutrients of food stays in the intestine too long, and it's fermented, and it goes off, which is not good. So the intestine is self-regulating, but if it's there for too long, that's also not very good. Therefore, let's go back to the first slide, which you haven't seen yet. So good nutrition. Let's to digest well, we must eat the right food, which are prepared in the appropriate way for you, which we call diet. Actually, diet, it's a Greek word, it's a wonderful word, which is derived from Greece, which means lifestyle, a harmonious lifestyle. Not what you eat, but lifestyle. So we'll see in this half an hour why lifestyle, and not only what you eat at breakfast, lunch and dinner. So okay, diet's puts us off a bit. So, but we all want a good diet. I think we aspire to it, but it's not always easy to implement. Let's have a look ahead. How many meals a day? How much, when, and what to drink, and how to behave after meals, from one meal to the other. So, half after. So here's the first question. How many meals a day? I've already said. I'll give you the answer. 3. This is the answer. Because have you been told it's better to eat a little frequently? Maybe you've been, or that you shouldn't go to bed without eating. But actually, that we're not programmed to digest in that way, because there's so many fashions, trends in diets. When you're not sure, ask yourself. Well, just think of the evolution of the species. Our ancestors, furthest away ancestors, let's say the first men on the earth, did they eat 3 to 5? They didn't have a pocket or a rucksack to put their snacks in. They didn't have shops and no bars, no cafes. How did they manage to evolve themselves? Maybe exactly for that. If they were to eat as we do, we wouldn't survive for 50 years. we would have become extinct. We would have transformed into something else. But surely, if they were to eat, they had eaten as we do, they wouldn't have survived. So we need to eat 3 times a day, not more, except for babies. Babies need to eat more frequently and less. So when they're breastfed, they're breastfed more often. So also their digestive apparatus is not big enough to deal with big quantities. So even though it increases in size, so 3 meals a day. But if I were to ask you again, 3 meals like the first one, or 3 meals like 2? So the older you get, 2 meals are better. 2 meals a day. That would actually be sufficient. The rest it's not a biological need, but rather it's a compensation, gratification, a societal need, a habit, mainly a habit. And therefore, anyway, we'll just see what and when. 3 is optimum, and every now and again, 2, and when you're older, only 2 would be sufficient. As we're not the same biologically, when you need to pass from 3 to 2 differs. And that, actually, if you develop sensitivity to your own body, you can discern when it's time to go down to 2 meals a day. Yeah, how come I'm not the same when I was 20? I ate this and the other. I ate 7 sandwiches a day and I was fine. Why, I don't know, but the effect we do know. But if you learn to listen to your body and to follow 1 or 2 rules, or just even out of curiosity, the body is better, and that's a big gratification. To feel that your own body is better, it's another form of gratification in itself, which is certainly more healthy than eating a big ice cream. Which you discern after a few spoonfuls that it's not doing you any good. We need to accept the challenge and to try without thinking it'll be like this forever. So you can just experiment and feel for yourself. And this success is a gratification in itself. And this is something which is quite crucial when and how much to eat. So many people say every day, what's the best? What should we do? So a small or non-existent breakfast. Some people just have coffee. And when I hear people say coffee on an empty stomach, I think of the poor old mucus in our gut, which will react not very badly. Or should we have a savory or sweet breakfast? So in Italy, it's very common people normally have a sweet breakfast. If you have the classic Italian breakfast, which is brioche and cappuccino, or jam and bread. So it means that by 10 o'clock, we already have a crash and we feel hungry. Crackers, biscuits, fruit, so fruit it transforms into glucose, so that has the same effect as crackers and biscuits. So these only a couple of hours before meals. What happens? So the stomach is happy, is full, but it's digested, but it's wasted. The part of the gastric juices which has enzymes which we could use to actually digest our lunch, and that means when lunch finally arrives, which should be the main meal of the day, let's say between midday and the 3, so that those part of the useful enzymes in the gastric juices are no longer available because we used them for the snack before, which brings us to sleepiness, of course. So it also depends on what you eat for lunch. The main meal, in terms of quantity and also quality, needs to be digested well. Therefore, so sleepiness, if it's not digested, which means we've seen not much chance to absorb the nutrients, and the body is still hungry because it didn't receive what it needed, because the ingredients weren't sufficiently digested. What do we add to that? So many people eat at their desk in a hurry. You know, how many of you eat at home and calmly at a table? Let's say half an hour. Not many of you, I imagine. So we should create a minimum of a setting, let's say. Also to eat you need a setting. So psychologists say I'm right. So it's a mental attitude when we eat. So I take out my lunchbox, and could be not an ugly box with cutlery to create a situation in which the brain puts himself in the attitude that now I'm going to eat and I'm going to digest. Just think, for example, the smells that we smell. The brain says, "Oh, today there's pasta with tomato sauce." So we'll also make available a set of enzymes to digest this, to eat a food which is different from the smell that we smell, actually can cause bad digestion because we haven't prepared the correct enzymes to deal with that food. Just think of how perfect, from an evolution point of view. So the smell, sense of smell, it was like a chemical detector to detect that food which was good, or that which could be poisonous or bad quality or contaminating. Just think of cats who sniff at everything. Also, and also dogs who are a bit more on a gross level. Cats, some things that they just won't touch. Have you noticed, for example, how I don't know if it's happened just to my cats, but if you give them the same thing for 2 or 3 times, they don't want it anymore. So we need to rotate what we eat. So maybe we kind of trick them with putting artificial odors, smells, because we need we don't want the same food because we actually need a varied diet. So first thing is setting a time and a certain mental calm. Breathe deeply. Let's say we give praise to the food we receive. We're grateful for that. And we think, okay, now I'm going to eat, and we eat, preferably in a calm manner. Maybe because it's the tail end of of us rushing around 5 minutes previously, or you already think about what do you have to do afterwards, or because we don't think about it and we just eat it in a spontaneous way, we risk eating too much in a hurry and not chewing well. If you don't give yourself time to taste the food, the fullness, the sensation of being full, it comes only 30 minutes late. So if you eat quickly, you eat for 20 minutes, it's too long. If you just eat and do nothing else and eat quickly. But if you eat slowly and wait 15 minutes, which we need to have a sensation of being full. And also, obviously, apart from digesting better. So midday, we should eat, should be the most complete. And it should keep us going until dinner. No need for snacks. Paradoxically, not even on a tray. Even if you do, let's say, even if you do sport in the afternoon, unless you're a kind of elite athlete who needs a special regime. And anyway, they don't eat so much as we may imagine. We do not need anything extra. Even an hour at the gym. We don't need anything to compensate that. And then we go to dinner. We have dinner, which should be consumed before sunset. In summer it's easy, in winter it's a bit more difficult. So should be. So the problem is now we tend to eat past 8 o'clock. 8:30, even later. But we may decide that if we have no time at 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock is too late, but we should eat as early as possible and have as light as possible dinner. So our digestion corresponds to the sun. So in the morning it's improving, maximum in the mid-morning, and then for lunch. So towards sunset it diminishes. So we should have. So this is something that helps us to have a better, good digestion and less sleepiness. So many people say they don't have breakfast because they almost feel nauseous for food. This is the result, actually. This is caused by eating protein in the evening, which we shouldn't do. Then I'll go into detail. They should only be consumed at midday and a light dinner. So if you can see that the bowl diminishes, and that indicates the reduction of quantity according to the lateness of the day. Are you disappointed? You feel like you've been, you're bereft of something or everything together. You're disappointed. But Well, a bit of experimentation, and then you choose yourselves. Okay, let's see. Okay, for me it happened all my life about drinking. I don't know if it's happened to you. So for example, I'm never thirsty when I eat. It's correct not to drink during a meal or very little, because the gastric juices, when it has a good composure, if with a high quota of enzymes, and there's sufficient liquid which circulates in the body, it doesn't need to be diluted by liquids. So when you use so gastric juices are fine as they are. They don't need diluting. And so that comes principally from vegetables, which we should always eat. So, and that should be sufficient for us not to have food which is not too dry. Obviously, if I'm going to eat a sandwich, you must eat because that really is too dry. But it should be an exception. Or in the sandwich, there should be so many vegetables that we don't need to drink a liquid. So I think of kids, because when they eat, they drink after every mouthful. But kids digest very well. But then these problems are created, which can come out 20 years later. So not eating while you eat, or at least as little as possible. What can we drink during meals? Half a glass of water, better gassy water with lemon, or a little bit juice of lemon juice. Do you have those little cups, Chinese cups? Oh, that's a quantity. Or mint tea, or some broth, which is hot. For those who like alcohol, a little bit of red wine with at least 12 degrees. So red, but not sparkling red wine, which can cause bloating, which is why we drink it at aperitif and not with dinner. A little bit of broth, even hot water at the end of a meal, just a tiny bit like that, not a whole cup. I see people drinking huge cups because that can, if you feel the need, it could be because you haven't chewed it properly and you didn't create enough saliva to mix with the food, or you didn't drink during the day, and you're thirsty, but you can't extinguish your thirst during the meal. Okay, coffee at a full stomach, 1 or 2 a day, it's not bad. But on an empty stomach, as I said earlier, it's like a punch in the stomach. Even in the morning, if you don't have, the problem is if you don't, also apart from being a blow to the stomach, if you have a coffee on an empty stomach at lunchtime, you might want a coffee for a coffee break at 11, and then you tend to have biscuits as well. The microbiotas, as we spoke of before, so they produces molecules which are useful at our cells. Produce molecules which are useful to our cells. It has the function of we now understand that fulfill functions which otherwise would not be fulfilled. One is to create short-chain fatty acids, so butyrate, which are the fuel which we need for the cells which line the gut, so that they can function and to regenerate themselves. When the microbiota is balanced and healthy, they are to transform vegetable fiber, which is very hard. For example, the husk of vegetables or even dry roots. So we can supplement this functioning with ghee, purified milk, butter, which produces this butyrate acid. So vitamins and trace elements is another category, and these help to produce B12, which is present only in animal products. So who is a strict vegan should know that they should take B12 to overcome this shortage in vegan diet. So I know vegan people so those who are really healthful, who don't need B12 because their microbiota already produces it sufficiently, but it's really, really rare. Usually, the microbiota of vegans is very unbalanced. It's unbalanced and it's not often investigated. We should be very careful when you make radical choices in your diet, when you exclude certain foods from your diet. It could be for various reasons. You should be careful. You should be careful with the possible consequences. You know that people who have celiac disease, they can't eat anything with gluten inside, but it's a molecule, a protein which is essential, which is crucial for a certain population of bacteria in the gut. Some children, 12 years old, who already have bloated stomachs, you think, oh, they don't have gluten, they should have imperfect health, but that has actually caused an imbalance in the microbiota. That can also cause high cholesterol Because when the microbiotic is unbalanced, we saw this on Tuesday afternoon, even the metabolism is affected. The problems with metabolic problems with the microbiota. So there can be a problem with people suffer celiacs, but they have no choice. So one must monitor and integrate probiotics, and to be really careful and to the substitution of parts of your diet. Therefore, when you exclude one thing, and some people, so some people exclude gluten for no reason, because on an empirical level they've noticed that not eating gluten products from wheat or other cereals, often there's a confusion from various kinds of gluten and yeasts, and so sometimes we confuse gluten with the effect of gluten and wheat, and yeast. But if you exclude gluten products, could cause on the long term, there could have deterioration in our immunity capacity, and also on a nutritional level. Whatever nutritional component which is fundamental should so we need to be able to we have to be aware of the repercussions in 3 months, 6 months, or a question of years. So our micro beings in our gut eat what we eat. So we hope they're well digested. What do they produce? So they also produce communication molecules, otherwise known as neurotransmitters. So you don't know what I'm talking about, but if I say to you serotonin, what is that? It's the hormone of happiness, which is actually produced in the intestine, starting with an amino acid, which is contained in foods, protein foods. When is there a good supply of this? When the proteins have been well digested. Let's think of chains with different beads of different colors. So each color corresponds to a different amino acid. So there are essential 9 amino acids. So they can't be substituted. We're not able to. So with microbiotic, it was said that if you eat some of the combinations that were proposed, also actually caused indigestion. So there are 9 amino acids which are not present in vegetables, which are organisms, a liver, which we can produce in only a minute quantity just to survive. So the maximum is in young people and babies, and which is reduced as we go on, because all the complex processes slow down and are more difficult and sometimes get blocked. And are blocked before the final result. What does that mean? That means that the further on we go, the older we get, the more careful we should be to have a more varied, to have a varied diet and to get our amino acids. But in particular, we need them for our muscles. If a muscular deficiency is and aging and precocious aging, if you feel this, even when you're older, you need to change what you eat. So we need physical exercise, and if it's reduced, so be careful with what you exclude. If you exclude for whatever reason, you must integrate it with essential amino acids. So if you choose one that's not derived from milk, we'll see later what the problems are. Let's say peas, soya, they're now good products. But so if you have a rigid vegan diet, vegetarian is a bit different because they can eat eggs, which is sufficient, but vegans must be careful and to integrate amino acids. So the important thing is we started off with serotonin. Tryptophan is assumed in a sufficient quantity from well-digested protein. It's transformed into serotonin by the microbiota in the gut. And that's absorbed through the mucus. It goes into the blood and transported. There's a sensation of happiness or well-being. Where is it derived from? Where does it go? How come it gives us this sensation? To the brain, actually. It goes to a kind of diffused mind to all the organs. If it went just to the mind, we probably wouldn't have that feeling of well-being, because well-being of serotonin, that sensation, if I could describe it, is the sensation of energy, efficiency, the desire to move, tone, to desire to do something. That's not the brain. The brain is... So the serotonin gives these benefits in all the tissues of the body, but not having a means to communicate as directly as the brain. It sends it to the brain. Okay, the brain then relays the information to us. The muscles are okay, we rested well, and today we're happy. So it relays the information from the signals that the various parts of our body which have received serotonin to the brain, which then gives us the message that we're okay. Can you be well and happy if you're very sick, if you're disabled on a physical level? You can't, not really. Okay, the great evolved beings, human beings, sure, but on average we can't. So if we have an organ which is not well, which even if it doesn't cause us pain, but even if the brain knows that it's not well, that organ, we're not going to get that signal of well-being. So the message is good eating habits, good digestion, healthy microbiota, which sends a message of a sensation of well-being in all the body, which is then relayed to the brain. So as a teacher of mine said, happiness is a sensation of being able to confront with ease all the problems that life presents, be they physical, mental, emotional. And Lama Michel has spoke about these things. And he reiterates often this. It gives us, we need a basic physical, a good healthy physical basis, and this is the sensation of well-being. Okay, I spoke about serotonin, but there are many others. It's a kind of mix, a game of, let's say 100, even many more, all the molecules which enter into this dance, which are called cytokines, proteins acting as messengers in the immune system. So it reminds me of a keyboard of a piano, so which is played jazz or whatever, or blues, by many fingers, which creates a kind of cocktail of sounds. This concept of cocktail I've had in my mind for a long time. We're like a bottle, let's imagine, full of water. Put some color in, and then slowly it becomes all blue. Let's put red. Then it becomes, it doesn't become red, it becomes purple. So we are a cocktail because we're 60% water, in which we mix continually all these cytokines, these transmitters, and we are constantly in changing, transformation. This body changes from minute by minute. A nice book to read on this subject, I don't know if you know, it's Italian author, Paolo Buzzacchiello, a great communicator and so he was interested in communication in sales, and then he developed his courses and workshop on books on where he groups all the neurotransmitters who give different results with our emotions. So determines the set of emotions that are present when we confront something. So he likes peanuts a lot. So when he's presented by something difficult, so he creates So he creates a pleasurable sensation that his brain can perceive, and in this case, the smell of peanuts. But he says, if you want to, so if you want to, if you want to make, if you want to reduce the capacity of your interlocutor, if you give them, for example, you can give him adrenaline if you want to make him angry, lose his temper. So he describes all these in a very practical way. Not so easy to put into practice, but when you understand the mechanisms, for example, people who are very volatile, who lose their temper very quickly, they're usually people who have high histamine levels. So none of my patients are here, but could. So if I'm, for example, even me, if I'm sensitive to histamines and I have to confront a difficult conversation, or if somebody, and I have an increase in the intake of histamines from chocolate or from milk or strawberries, that can trigger me, and I can. So you have to choose what you intake. So if we talk about modulating our emotions, everything which contains histamine, because we all have histamine which we produce from foods, we bring instability, emotional instability, but also mental difficulty in concentration, lack of lucidity, a whole lot of problems, side effects, which we actually think is our innate quality, but actually, biologically, it's a symptom of something that's not working in our body. So we can regulate this through food. Let's go on. So when should we what? We should eat protein at lunchtime because it takes a long time to digest them. And in the evening, we don't digest so well. So we don't want to activate ourselves. We need to relax ourselves in order to be able to sleep well. So always with vegetables all the time, and at lunch, at dinner, carbohydrates which have a relaxing effect. At midday, so we shouldn't really have a plate of pasta in the evening, at midday. So carbohydrates with vegetables in the evening, which should be, for those who digest well, at lunchtime could be raw, but if you have bad digestion, but at lunch, at dinner time, we should have only cooked vegetables, and not in the evening. We shouldn't eat cold food. It's a problem because our stomach is 38.5 degrees. Anything of an inferior temperature makes us contract our muscles in our stomach. So we shouldn't, it doesn't help our digestion. So carbohydrates, the problem is with carbohydrates is simply shouldn't be eaten alone because because it's digested very quickly and the absorption also, because it's absorbed already in the mouth with the saliva. So they give a kind of glycemic peak. Only if we eat them on their own. If it's boiled rice or pasta alone, without any sauce of fruit or bread, whatever, boiled potatoes, this glycemic effect. But if we have vegetables before, and if it's seasoned with a bit of with healthy fats, cocoa oil, various oils, which the glycemic profile is different. It's modulated and it's prolonged. Therefore, carbohydrates, we should always, in any case, regulate the quantity of carbohydrates that we ingest, be it at lunchtime or dinner time. So we should have fiber, protein, and a tiny amount. So can we have tagliatelle with a meat sauce in the evening? Yes, it's okay, because the meat in a sauce for pasta, there's hardly anything, 20 grams. It doesn't have any effect. Let's say so la carbonara, no, because there's too much protein. So if you have a lot of cheese, Parmesan cheese or pecorino on top, anyway, we should avoid sugars on their own. If it's fruit or bread with jam, which is the best way to have a peak in a sugar high. And then we have which causes the pancreas to overwork, so which can affect its capacity to produce insulin. So I'm just going to clear up something else. So there's some people I realize who think that honey doesn't contain sugars, but you'll know that it does, right? What's the difference between? It's not glucose. It's fructose, but it becomes immediately glucose. I'd say of the two, when it's not. So honey is also problematic because it contains sugars. So even maple syrup is another sugar, for example. So talking about sugars, so fruit. When is fruit okay? Far from meals. That means fresh and raw at breakfast, or cooked at dinner time. There's a food. So fruits and proteins should never go together. So protein which has a slow digestion, and sugars which has a very quick digestion, they should not go together. So the longer fruit remains in the stomach, because it's accompanied by protein, which causes fermentation.
No, perché nello stomaco c'è la dinamica gastrica, funziona così. Al primo boccone di qualunque cosa il piloro si chiude. Da quel momento tutto quello che va dentro si mescola. Esatto, esatto. Quindi, perché ho detto invece la frutta cruda?
So raw fruit, like for the first thing in the day, because the first mouthfuls triggers the gastric juices. So something which is difficult to digest, I eat first of all, because I have the maximum of gastric juices which work on this food. So the last thing that we eat, which is means that the last thing we eat is going to be digested less well. So we should eat protein first, vegetables, preferably cooked, pasta or rice, second, and then if I still want something, a dessert, but usually not. The most complicated thing to digest and the slowest thing should be eaten first. If we're talking about carbohydrates, for not to have a glycemic peak, because it has we should eat a bit of vegetables, and then the pasta or rice, because in that way there is a kind of causes a slowdown in the absorption, and so that we should all need cooked fruit at dinner time because it's easier to be absorbed. So cooking something is like a half digestion, a pre-digestion. So we should eat in this order: protein or fiber, healthy fats and carbohydrates. In this way, no glycemic peak, so we can have all the thing together. So that was breakfast. So, as I said, snacks, no thank you. So when can we have a snack? Maybe 6 or 7 hours between meals during the day only, not at night time. Or when we're going to have a training, or maybe let's say that we have a small lunch, but today, let's say these days, all the trends, somebody here who does a physical training, who runs 20 kilometers at least, all the training schedules should be on empty stomachs. So before breakfast, because the physical training, which is metabolic, brings out the resources, the hepatic and glycemic functions. There's a kind of there's a kind of continuous, causes a continuous
ma non mangiando o
gymnastics.
prima.
So,
Soprattutto se lo sforzo non è oltre l'ora di attività. Tanto per 40 minuti basta il glucosio che abbiamo ancora in circolo.
so if we do 40 minutes of exercise,
Milligrammi per millilitro che abbiamo
what we have in the body is sufficient.
glicemia più il glicogeno prima dei muscoli e poi del fegato. E qui coprono già 40-50 minuti. E poi magari per 10 minuti
For 10 minutes,
alle fonti, quelle un pochino più che peraltro sarebbe bene smantellare ogni
but even after that 40 minutes, it's still quite good to eliminate
poi si trasforma in grasso non utilizzato,
what we have
diventano quelle
stored as
riserve
fat,
che
are old stores,
più a tirar fuori,
which there are some resources which can't be accessed.
un pochino il corpo.
So to make the body a bit hungry is actually a good thing.
È una ginnastica benefica.
So it's a useful gymnastics.
Dopo pranzo,
So
post prandium vuol dire
postprandial means after
ci rifacciamo
lunch or dinner.
andiamo
So,
avanti alla scuola medica salernitana.
so here's the health guide, the Sanitas Salernitanum, which is a medieval school of health. After postprandium means that we should
Ambulabis, quindi camminerai
we should
10 minuti, un quarto d'ora.
be erect, and then after
Il fatto che chi ha il cane
and dinner,
sia dovuto al fatto che comunque è costretto a uscire.
and then no, sorry, after lunch.
Tempesti, il cane la pipì la vuole fare. E quindi
Stand up, and then we walk after dinner.
non c'è miglior convincitore di un cane che ti viene ad invitare ad una passeggiata. Quindi se non avete un cane che vi invita alla passeggiata, io avevo anche gatti che mi invitavano alla passeggiata, ne avevo uno in particolare, il gatto da trekking, che lui quando andava sulla porta,
I do know actually a cat, a trekking cat, who actually
e così finché non lo seguivi, se voleva andare in passeggiata.
who wants to be taken on a walk.
Ad avere un cane, cercate un gatto da trekking, da passeggiata. Oppure un amico, oppure la musica, oppure un buon audiolibro, insomma, fatevi sta passeggiata.
So we need to, in the evening, to have a quick walk, not necessarily at midday. So foods that can cause problems.
Nel nodo. I lievitati.
So yeasts,
Fanno più danni dei cereali.
they actually produce more damage than cereals, more disturbances, health, let's say, bloating of candida.
Tanti disturbi di mal di testa, di sonnolenza. Non
So insomnia,
al cereale,
not only caused by gluten or cereals,
al lievito, ai
but the yeasts, it's the method of levitation
al tipo di lievito, di insieme
rather than the type of yeast. It's actually the method of levitation.
il sintomo è molto importante.
When the symptom is extreme,
Guardatevi la lingua, quelli che hanno
look at the tongue, a white tongue. If you have a white tongue nearly all the time,
probabile che abbiano
it's
la stessa patina anche nell'intestino, quella si chiama candidosi.
so it's probably the same in your stomach,
Candidosi intestinale
but
diventa candidosi vaginale, perché
but it doesn't always become a candida in the vagina.
pensa alla candida vaginale.
But it doesn't necessarily happen. Candida in the intestine, it's
Una
in the gut. It's an excess,
quote di candide
a growth, an overgrowth
è assolutamente
in the gut,
normale e fisiologica.
which is
Le candide ci aiutano
Candida is actually very useful, which helps us to digest carbohydrates. But if I eat too much fruit, sugar, or carbohydrates,
crescono di più perché
and then in that case the Candida grows
nutrono di più.
more,
Quindi arrivano a soverchiare le altre popolazioni buone.
and they overwhelm the other good population in our gut.
Questa è un'altra storia, come agiscono le candide, che è una
So,
cosa interessantissima.
So the way Candida is
e che sono quelle che poi danno prima i sintomi intestinali, che possono anticipare anche di 10 anni la comparsa dei sintomi a distanza, che possono
so
essere
the
ma anche
cystitis can actually manifest 10 years after the cause if you have athlete's foot, for example, or some other kind of fungus.
sole non ci stanno le candide, cioè non ci riescono a sopravvivere. Se non arriva continuamente attraverso il sangue circolante un rinforzo di spore o di lieviti. I lieviti dei lievitati che
So
noi
the
usiamo sono
yeasts,
esattamente, anche se non sono candide,
so even if they're not candida,
sono
are
rinforzi
reinforcements
aggregarsi alla
which
popolazione
to
già
get together with the
esistente
resident population
il
and
punto
which it
della
increases
complessità ed è quella di
the
cambiare
fungi,
in base
changes
all'età presente.
it changes its quantity on the basis
Non fanno
of the
nulla. Tanti
population.
lieviti da
Very little yeast is okay,
spora, poi
but
fa, che è come
but if it's too much, it causes the
quello che sapete che bisogna lasciare nel bosco quando vai a porcini, ecco, quelli lì che vi dice che li devi
but
tenere nel bosco,
can create too much growth.
hanno le radici, hanno queste spore e poi quando si aggregano e si sviluppano possono diventare candide, aspergilli, fusarium, insomma ce ne sono
Which can
diverse.
cause this excess of candida.
Come si fa a mangiare pane senza avere un eccesso di lieviti?
How can we eat bread without an excess of candida? By toasting it,
A
but
monte mangiare
even
pane
this
con una lievitazione giusta.
with the right levitation.
Anche il lievito di birra alla fine, pasta madre
Even the yeast in the beer.
soprattutto non ha istamina, il lievito di birra l'istamina ce l'ha, quindi però l'importante è che ci sia una lievitazione buona.
So as I said, good levitation, which doesn't mean necessary, doesn't mean a long one,
Cosa succede?
because what happens
Levitazione,
during levitation,
i lieviti mangiano, cioè
the yeast pre-digests the proteins of the
cereali della
of this cereal
la trasformano
they
e però loro
transform,
numero.
but then they increase in number. So a very long levitation has a good effect on the quantity of gluten present in the dough
Ci sarà un aumento
because it's pre-digested, but there's on the other hand an increase in the number of yeast.
pasta cruda.
So
I lieviti, le spore di lieviti
the growth of yeast. So yeast is actually able to survive a temperature beyond 2000 degrees. A well-cooked bread
dentro ancora
in the
tantissimi lieviti vivi, quindi la tostatura serve
so the toasting the bread, it dries it out
a sopravvivere,
because yeast can't survive in dry bread, but it also
finire la
it
rottura
finishes
quasi
it brings to an end,
quindi lievitati, ok,
reduces the harmful effects of bread.
tostati,
So toast the bread.
gallica morbida. Allora, la domanda perché chi ascolta insegnamenti
So the question is, when
bisogno istintivamente di
when I feel want focaccia, not bread,
dopo
which is kind of pizza dough,
potrebbe esserci sotto un problema
I'll reply later. It could be a question of some kind of shortage of something.
se no perdiamo il filo.
Questions like this I'll take at the end.
Glutine e frumento.
Let's have gluten.
Qui cos'è glutine?
What is gluten?
La proteina
It's the protein from and wheat
in quantità,
and also other cereals contain to a lesser degree.
che sono quelle che
So
facilmente danno origine a intolleranza o allergia.
which gives allergies. It's the proteins that gives us allergies, not the fiber. The fibers don't,
Proteiche che interagiscono
which interact,
conosciute dal sistema immunitario che può
which
o buone o non buone. A quel punto
which intervenes with our immune system, decides if it's good or not. So there's another tolerance. So we have celiac disease, which is non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which can be transitory, which we should overcome, I believe. So in the non-celiac gluten sensitivity, when you have extreme bloating, so we should eliminate wheat gluten because there's also histamine there. So we need to reintroduce in a form. Do you know the difference between quantity of gluten of Italian wheat and Canadian wheat, which is 80% of the wheat that we have? It's 20% more. So let's say the baguette you find, French baguette, in the supermarket, they're half cooked and they complete that in the supermarket or for example, in a motorway restaurant. There is pure gluten added because it improves the levitation and increases the speed of levitation, and then it makes it more spongy. So it becomes even sort of rubberish 4 hours later. So the Canadian wheat, as I said before, has 20 times more gluten than the Italian wheat. A good dough of pizza, let's say, but if you add gluten, as sometimes happens, even in pizza, when you eat pizza, when you feel bad the whole night, it's the yeast, the problem of the yeast. It's not because you added salad or salami on top. Another class are the... So don't eliminate gluten for no good reason, and not for too long, because it could, your immune system could not accept it anymore. Let's say. So if you go 8 to 10 months without, it means that you run the risk of not being able to reintroduce it into your diet. It's not, could be that. So you eliminate them all. So if you eat very few things and the same things, you can really suffer from deficiencies in certain nutrients. And the problem isn't resolved anyway. If I have a problem, if I avoid the obstacle, it's okay to avoid for a time, but we need to really find the cause. If I find that it is a celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, We get rid of that food, not others, just the one. But we should follow a very careful diet, which reintroduces what we would lose by eliminating that food, the microbiotic. So we need the biotica. So we need to be really careful to, and then we get to the FODMAPs. Have you ever heard of these? Are fruit. There are foods, all carbohydrates, vegetables, which have a high content of sugars, which are good terrain for fermentation, which can nourish the gut flora, and which can result in bloating, which we could have the dysbiosis of the colon. So that means the SIBO is the overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. So patients in this case are advised to eliminate all foods which have these FODMAPs, fruit, nearly all, so many vegetables. They're better, but they haven't resolved the problems, because when you reintroduce these foods in a small quantity, the problem represents itself. What do we need to do? We need to correct. In that case, there's an excess of fermented flora, which, as in Candida, which is when we have a diet that's too full in refined cereals, white flour, sugars, potatoes, beetroot or carrots. We nourish and they ferment. This Candida, this fungi, it hyper ferments. When we reduce the assumption of these, the population reduces and they ferment less. Therefore, we have a sensation of well-being. I have a patient avoiding FODMAPs. So it was actually a diet for Candida, and she was so well. The problem was at the first ice cream that she ate after 2 years, 12 hours later, she had the same problem. She had vaginal Candida. How's it possible? No, it wasn't there already. They have a capacity, the microorganisms actually have a capacity to regenerate very quickly. Therefore, we should be careful about what we eliminate totally. And because when we introduce it, you haven't reduced anything. You haven't resolved anything. Okay. Cow milk and derivatives. It can cause diarrhea or constipation. Babies, even those who are breastfeeding, they often have constipation when they change from breast milk to other forms of milk. They become immediately constipated, and this happens in adults. The intolerances, they don't always manifest in diarrhea, also with constipation for all forms of intolerances. In cow milk, what are the foods that most No, let me say it later.
E vediamo invece, no, stiamo andiamo avanti come slide e stiamo invece avanti ancora. I cereali vanno sempre bene per tutti.
All cereals are good for everybody,
Costituzione ci sono cereali che vanno meglio,
but there are some cereals that are better or worse for each of us. We have the
per accenni sui 3 dosha,
so let's have a look at the so-called doshas, humours,
dei vostri dosha di appartenenza, no?
in Ayurvedic medicine.
Che non tutto fa bene a tutti.
So not everything is good or bad for everybody. So
Questo serve anche questa slide per far vedere che
this just shows that when we take wheat away, there are many other cereals, and not only rice. For example, there are some constitutions for which rice is very bad. For example, if you have Vata humor, who have dry skin, don't digest so well,
con grande voglia di muoversi,
who always want to move,
mentali, incertezza,
would have uncertainty in their mind, who have internal dialogue. To these people, rice is absolutely no good.
riso quale vi fa peggio?
Do you know which is the worst?
Sconsigliati, no, raccomandati, no. No, però per Vata invece è sconsigliato
For Vata people,
un tipo di riso che
which is type of rice? Basmatic rice.
ha troppa aria nel proprio interno, quindi
It has too much air within each grain.
aria che nel dosha Vata è già troppo
So introduces
quindi qui
too much air into.
i risi italiani che hanno il chicco tondo sono molto più consigliati.
So the Italian rice with round grains have much less air inside. Therefore, it's much more suitable.
Alle popolazioni
So the rice which is adapted.
di dove nasce il riso basmati.
So basmatic rice,
Costituzionalmente uguali.
it's suited to people from where this rice originates. We're constitutionally different. When basmatic rice became very fashionable,
Coltivato molto,
it was cultivated a lot,
paesi che non hanno delle regole
which from countries where they don't have the same rules governing agricultures, so that they can have a lot of arsenic and other substances, are absolutely no good for us. This trend of basmatic rice, because of a low glycemic index.
non mangiando il riso bollito da solo.
Well, we can, as I've said, we can reduce that by not eating boiled rice on its own, by combining it with something.
Alla fine non si mangia il riso bollito da solo.
But you should never eat boiled rice on its own.
Rapidamente risolta.
So that's resolved. No need to have basmatic rice. I have an Italian rice, not super biological. Even a non-biological is much better than basmatic rice. Can contain all sorts of contaminants in an environment with very few regulations.
Solo che lì ho tradotto ho preso una cosa già così, che ho anche tradotto, se andiamo avanti, perché chi sta ascoltando
So I've translated this.
guardare un attimo,
So,
perché chiaramente uno vuole sapere un attimo.
so for example, rice.
Saracene, molto sottovalutato,
So rice. So
però è veramente una buona alternativa. L'avena è una
so buckwheat is a good substitute.
buona
Rye, barley is not so good for everybody.
non è così
It's not so good.
una sostituzione.
It's not a substitute. So even barley can have something.
Gonfiano,
So beans are good for everybody.
perché
Why do beans cause bloating? Because they have the husk.
un ammoio giusto, una cottura
So therefore, a long cooking process without salt and with soaking beforehand, you can eliminate the husk outside.
ci si può anche fare, oppure passandoli però al passaverdure, non esempio cose in immersione perché rimane tutto lì, non la vedo più ma c'è tutta la parte corticale, oppure utilizzando per chi ha più problemi
So for those who have more problems,
scusate, i legumi già decorticati, e adesso ci sono, oppure c'è un'alternativa, prendete nota perché questo lo dico a poche persone,
I'm saying this to very few people,
come attivare una sorta di predigestione della parte della fibra
to how to achieve a kind of pre-digestion
intestino,
outside the digestion is to soaking
barattolo va bene lo stesso,
or even in a tin,
il giorno prima,
but you prepare them at least 24 hours before.
kefir o dello yogurt
You need some kefir or yogurt made at home
confezionato
because the commercial one is not alive. So if you put 2 spoonfuls of this
200-300 grammi di
for every 200 or 300 tin of cooked, and you mix it and you leave it in a
il giorno dopo, non temete
normal temperature,
cambio di sapore, non lo vedi neanche, e li cucinate come volete.
and then you can cook them. It doesn't affect the taste. This fermentation, this pre-digestion,
Fuori e generalmente rende molto più tollerabile
and it makes whatever
però hanno
bean much more tolerable.
in casa o hanno la possibilità di trovarlo. Un'altra alternativa
Another an alternative to this,
bisogna usare il legume tipo i ceci in forma di hummus, cioè
so for example,
preparare
chickpeas.
hummus
You can prepare a mousse beforehand,
limone
let's say like hummus,
e poi lasciarlo,
and then you can leave it 24 hours
fa una fermentazione
because it achieves a certain fermentation with limone, which has a certain benefit.
sarebbe meglio fuori frigo.
Should be left outside the fridge.
Adesso lì io queste cose, ripeto, ve le dico,
I'm telling you this.
conservazione di un alimento fuori frigo,
Too.
però il limone in sé
Lemon in itself, it guarantees a certain, not for a long time,
magari non fatelo d'estate, perché
well, maybe not in summertime because everything
però
in summer things go off more quickly. So beans,
dipende dal fatto che uno sia vegano o vegetariano. Quante proteine contengono i legumi?
so how much protein? In the best one, in the best quality, let's say chickpeas, so just 20% is protein, but they're lacking the amino acids.
Trarre proteine solo dai legumi,
So if you think you can get all your proteins from beans, you're not getting all you need. Soya,
mancano sempre quei 9. È un vegetale, però per la soia ad esempio si possono usare
So-
proteine pure, quindi il tofu,
from soya, you can extract the tofu, which has a higher proportion of protein.
che non c'è più la fibra,
It doesn't bloat because it doesn't have fiber.
filmati dove ti insegno a fare in casa
So when you see lessons online,
legume crudo, lo frulli, lo metti con dell'acqua, poi lo metti nella pentola e poi lo fai.
are often making mistakes in telling you how to make tofu.
Non è tofu, è
That isn't tofu. Often what they tell you
legume intero, perché di fatto
that isn't real tofu that they show you how to make.
quindi se ci sono
It's
fibre, perché quello che ne esce
it's simply some kind of it's not tofu, but it's some kind of substance that
che fanno invece il, chiamiamolo tofu, con
But you can make it from peas, or 2 or 3 other cereals. But in the proper sense, you can make tofu, but only in the proper sense. So I'm talking here about other products that can cause problems. So, nuts. So, proteins can cause the most intolerances. Dried nuts has a lot of protein, but also can give you higher probability of causing intolerances. Now, I'm not talking here. I'm talking about nuts. Walnuts and peanuts contain an enormous amount of histamine, less in almonds, and hazelnuts don't have any. One should be careful. One can be allergic or intolerant to any one of these. When you put something in your mouth and there's a kind of sharp taste on your tongue, it's a sign of intolerance. So you shouldn't continue to eat it. It'd be a good idea to stop while you can before you get sick. Where I live, it's not. They say it's normal that almonds kind of bite your tongue. That's not normal. You shouldn't eat anything that has that effect on your tongue. Fresh fruit. This can cause allergies, in particular the protein part, which is in the skin. So when you put in your mouth an apple or whatever, you have the sensation, sharp sensation on your tongue, or a funny sensation in your stomach. That is an reaction of intolerance. Try peeling the fruit. Maybe the pulp doesn't have this effect. So you could cook both nuts and fruit. You could actually cook them very, very slightly. So you could get, for example, an apple might cause an anaphylactic shock, but not a cooked apple. So I often talk about cream of hazelnut cream or almonds, because the fact that it's toasted and it's pasteurized as well. Therefore, good part of the proteins which cause allergies are often eliminated. Foods that cause problems, milk derivatives, and there's a big difference between cow, goat, and other animals. The biggest problems, they are caused by cow milk. the cow is the most different animal from our which has it's the most different animal from us, more so than goats. So the immune system has a kind of rejection of this. So what is the part which gives pure reaction, a bigger reaction? It's the protein. So, and they think it's the lactose, it's the sugar, which is the sugar. So they think they can resolve the problem by taking milk with no lactose, but it doesn't make any difference. So if you have milk with no lactose, it gives less problems. So lactose problems, it means that you have diarrhea almost immediately after it's consumed. But in yogurt, you don't. You already eliminate lactose. So the problems are given by the proteins. So you need to just remove them. Another trick, if you don't have serious problems, to have is to have very, very mature cheese. So because the protein is transformed in the process of maturation. But if you have inflammation, allergies or intolerances in the gut, etc., these are the foods that you need to eliminate at least temporarily. Milk. So the adult human beings shouldn't consume milk. We do not have the instruments necessary, the digestive capability necessary. There are some people who tolerate better and others who tolerate worse. So it's a question of evolution. So it depends. For example, depends on geographic variations. So in alpine regions, people have a greater tolerance of milk. So sheep and goats, which is better tolerated. I like it, don't like it, sorry. We'll talk about this in another conference. So good bad digestion. What are the interferences? So an irritable bowel symptom and a high level of histamines. There are different causes which need to be addressed in different ways. I'm going ahead because we can't. We've already talked for quite a long while. The big problem is for everybody the additives and that are added to food, which are new. And our immune system don't recognize them and combats it, and militates against it. And these can end up in the liver. Vitamin C, in the form of preservatives. It's not bad in itself, but if you want to memorize the list of additives which are harmful, you should avoid anything unless you want to memorize all the lists of ones that don't do any harm. You should avoid preservatives of any kind. If you read on the label a name that your grandmother wouldn't even know how to pronounce, don't buy it. What do you eat? Well, if you can't buy a snack because it's got too much rubbish inside it, you follow recipe from your grandmother. So, for example, with a good quality wheat, and a wheat that you know where it's come from, like Italian wheat, of eggs which are so open eggs, look at the shell, and there you can understand if it's biological. Don't get two, because they're from chickens, because they might be kept. So zero means that they live outside, they're on the earth, raised on the earth, and that they have not biological feed, but not so harmful. It can be 0, 1, 2, 3, but 3 is terrible. Just don't get the eggs with 3 number, because that's super intensive farming. Anyway, we won't go into this because I could cry. So a good digestion produces good gut health, which in turn produces well-being for the whole body, a good agni digestive fire. So we need to have lots of life vitality and not so much waste. So there are things that are good. So Vata needs. So, for example, so the amount of what we eat is determined by the humus that we saw before, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So we have Vata pacifying diets, Pitta pacifying diets, Kapha pacifying diets, where we hope to produce Sama, a balanced metabolism, Agni. Condiziona maggiormente e in modo più vario proprio il processo digestivo, perché gli alimenti hanno anche ognuno un valore simbolico, un valore simbolico diciamo un po' assoluto legato alla caratteristica dell'alimento, poi c'è un valore simbolico. So foods have different symbolic contained within them. What the personal value we put onto them. What did my mother give me, for example, or maybe maybe it could be a comfort food, or what did my mother force me to eat that I didn't want to eat? So that could easily become something, for example, to which I become allergic, because the brain memorizes the global experience. If I ate a certain food of a certain consistency and color in a situation connected to a very painful experience, or because if I was forced to eat it, if I see that again, it could reactivate the sensation of unease that I had when I was in that I experienced in that first unpleasant situation. So other concepts. So biology is, I want to eat proteins at dinner time, or have the aperitivo later night. You can't play around with it. If I work on diesel, I can't put petrol inside, normal petrol. So there's a connection between the internal world, the intestine, and outside. If we want to improve our digestion, the quality of the foods that we eat, not in the short term, but at the long term, we should be careful. So we need to be careful of what damages the environment. How many detergents, aggressive, that we use at home? Let's say cleaning products. We have, with a good motivation, we want to disinfect, but they actually pollute. And these in turn cause problems within us and create pathogens. And the last thing I would say is not everything is good for everybody or is bad for everybody. And that's what I want to say. Thank you. If you want, if you have energy, there's a question and answer session now, which we can't hear. The question is, for those of you listening, is the mother yeast, the original yeast, also from lemon, and so the yeast derived from foods that caused us in themselves, we have an intolerance. Can the yeast produced from them, is it harmful to me? No, because the yeast transforms them completely. So we're talking about the process of making yeast. So live yeast, which you can get in a dried form. So we're talking about how to get the yeast, how to produce it yourselves. The various things that are available, like sachets of dried yeast.
lipidi. Ah, no, sana o come infiammatoria? Allora, come proteine in realtà tutte, però io direi anacardi, nocciole, le quote di potassio che possono esserci in un pistacchio rispetto alle nostre necessità sono veramente poche, bisognerebbe mangiarne veramente tanti. Di frutta secca non è,
So it's difficult to translate this
solo per
because
l'apporto calorico è meglio
I
così.
can't
Quindi
connect
i pistacchi non hanno comunque
the question which I didn't hear with the
gli
answer.
anacardi neanche, mi risulta, e sicuramente non le nocciole. Però, mentre invece se parliamo di quelli più infiammatori di tutti, per l'alto contenuto di istamina, vi ho detto le arachidi e le noci, le arachidi di più. Poi la risposta, ripeto, individuale è sì, sì, ma omega 3 ce ne sono in tanti semi e anche in tanti altri alimenti. Io ad esempio sceglierei l'olio di semi di vino se dovessi scegliere una fonte di omega 3. L'istamina infiamma, però se uno parte da una base bassa normale non se ne accorge. Se uno è già una persona con una certa, anche solo tendenza all'allergia, si butta benzina sul fuoco. E quindi una delle più proteiche è l'arachide, che tra l'altro non è un seme oleoso, non è un seme, ma è un legume. Però diciamo che lo consideriamo sempre seme. Lì i livelli infiammatori. Allora, io penso che in realtà anche lo zucchero bianco, allora per chi ascolta la domanda è se c'è
Okay, the
differenza
question was
anche lo zucchero bianco di
even white,
frutta, che tra l'altro
even the
non è mai
sugar
visto con gli italiani. In Italia
from
in realtà non è
beets.
zucchero nel
We
cocco
don't have
e
we don't
neanche
have cocoa, we don't have sugar
e
cane.
neanche di barbabietola,
So white
neanche
sugar from
di
beetroot,
raffinato.
not too refined,
Occasionalmente, quando lo si mangia
occasionally
da solo, quindi con fibre o con altre
with
cose,
fibers and other things, it's not so
forse
harmful.
da quale ottica? Parliamo di una, non so, di una terapia
Let's think of a diet
mirata al controllo della glicemia
to
per chi ha un
control
problema diabetico,
it
pensiamo a una
for
candida,
those with
pensiamo
diabetic problems or to control candida
assolutamente per
or
migliorare
diet
l'apporto calorico,
just
dipende sempre,
to get the right intake of calories. It depends.
ma sempre mixandolo insieme ad altri elementi, perché anche lo zucchero di cocco è zucchero.
So even sugar from coconut is still sugar.
La stevia, che sono dolci ma non hanno assolutamente zucchero, e questi possono essere
Stevia could be
consumati quasi liberamente.
can be consumed
La
almost
stevia no, non ci
freely.
rischia niente perché non
There's
richiede
no
zucchero
risk
la stevia,
because you
quindi
can't eat so much.
ci si stomaca prima. Con l'eritritolo può al limite venire un leggero effetto lassativo, a qualcuno può anche far proprio. Ok? Ok? No, qualcuno? Ah, focaccia. Allora, secondo me era
The,
un bisogno di grassi, una
so if you have a
carenza di
craving for something like
carboidrati lipiidi.
focaccia, as we mentioned before, maybe you've got this subconscious craving for fats, for oils.
Grassi. Ma in realtà se noi stiamo insieme è perché abbiamo delle membrane lipidiche che tengono l'acqua fuori o dentro e il resto dall'altra parte. E invece diete troppo senza grassi, ripeto, la scelta poi di quali grassi sta a noi, portano a delle carenze. Quando uno non sta bene, probabilmente è in uno stato di superossidazione, quindi più cellule muoiono e hanno bisogno di essere rimpiazzate, e c'è più bisogno di grassi che non di altre cose.
So if you're in a very stressful state, you over-oxidize and kill off lots of cells, and these need to be replaced. So oil's a good thing to consume in that case.
O anche l'olio d'oliva poi.
I'm sorry, there's...
Sì, ma non in streaming.
Okay, I can't address this question in streaming because I can't mention this in streaming. I don't know what the question is, but...
Ok, allora, le domande erano
So the questions are,
marca di crema
if there's a
consigliata,
cream,
propaganda inutile.
a certain cream which is better for you,
Semi come
if
gliadino possono essere
so seeds like
sempre compatibilmente con le intolleranze o le allergie che sono assolutamente
so seed oils depends on
la prova
your personal experience, because you can have intolerance or not. So
la dose che fa il veleno, ossia
so it's the dosage, as I said before,
non di
that it's the dosage that creates the poison. So maybe you're okay up to a certain point, and which becomes
continuamente il tipo di
harmful after a certain point.
cosa positiva. No, la stevia,
Stevia is...
allergie alla stevia io ne ho sentite veramente poco.
I've heard of very, very few people who are allergic to stevia.
Quelli sì, potenzialmente, però essendo lo zucchero,
So stevia,
proteina appunto lo zucchero, ha meno probabilità di dare, cioè ha dei residui proteici veramente scarsi, però nel campo delle allergie
when we
nulla
talk
è
about
sicuro,
allergies, nothing, we can't exclude anything,
però le parti
unfortunately.
sono le più potenti.
But as I said before, the protein parts are that which generally cause allergies. Buon appetito, enjoy your dinner.